Hi everyone, this is Jem Barone from the Office of Career Services and Internships, and today we're going to talk about building an effective resume. Some of our goals will be to develop an understanding of the importance of developing a competitive resume. I feel like anyone can create a generic resume, but in order to be strategic, in order to get a call back from the employer, it is important to create a competitive resume that is specifically tailored to the job or internship that you're going to apply to. We're also going to learn effective ways to highlight your skills and abilities to employers through your written communication skills. So if they ask for critical thinking skills, how can one put that on their resume? We're going to explore some strategies today because at the end of the day, you want to show the employer why you are the best candidate out of everybody who has applied, so they bring you in for an interview. So it's your resume and your cover letter that gets you an interview, and your interview and your references hopefully get you the job. So in addition to exploring those two areas, we're also going to apply these strategies to your future resume. So keeping in mind your future goals, your career interests, and taking what we talk about today to then tailor your resume towards something very specific that you are interested in. So on this side, we see the progression towards developing a strong resume. Some of the first steps are self-assessment, knowing who you are and what you would bring to the employer. So whether it's reviewing Focus 2 or assessing your interests, your values, your skills, thinking about your unique attributes and how that makes you a competitive candidate, and then exploring through the what can I do with a major links and really assessing how your skills fit into a variety of jobs and industries, and then doing an effective job search by focusing in on specific areas that you believe you would really excel in, and then tailoring that resume based on what you would bring to that employer, what you would bring to that role. Always remember a cover letter is going to be important as well, but for today we're going to focus in on resumes. So let's start off with some true and false. The first one, I can use the same resume over and over again. That is going to be a false. We always want to make adjustments so the employer feels like you are speaking exactly to the position that they're recruiting for. Sometimes it's just moving a couple of bullet points around. Other times it's revamping your summary of qualifications section or an objective section, or adding something different based on what the employer is looking for. A resume should always be exactly one page. This one is also false. What I would recommend if you are on 2 pages is to make sure that is key information on that second page. If it is past work history that's not relevant to what you're going into, I would not have 2 pages. But if it is equally important as your first page, then you may explore having 2 pages, because some people may have worked multiple jobs or have done multiple volunteering or internships. So you should always do what is best for you. But the times that I wouldn't have 2 pages is if you're only a little bit over on the second page, or if it's not as relevant. But if it is all relevant and you need the full 2 pages or 2.5 pages, then you could explore that option. But again, always think what is most important for the specific job you're applying to. A resume should incorporate keywords and key results. This one is true. We always want to speak to the specific position you are applying to. So that could include keywords from a job description, as well as really expanding what you can do for the employer through listing results from your past positions or even from your academic courses. Number 4, I should always include a summary of qualifications section on my resume. This one is false. I do really like the summary of qualifications section, but you have to have concrete evidence. So it's not an always, but it could be something you may incorporate into your document in order to make it competitive. And in a few moments, we'll go over exactly what this specific section is and how you can maximize it on your resume. For number 5, I should use a template when developing my resume. This one is false. I do not recommend a template. A template really boxes you in regards to how you can format your resume and how you can display certain things to an employer. You may look at templates for some ideas, but my recommendation is start in a blank Word document and really create it yourself. Use bolding, use tabs, use your bullet points, so it's easier to update as you grow in your career. Number 6, use of personal pronouns. So I, you, we, he or she is highly recommended. This one is false. We're going to avoid personal pronouns. We're going to start off with action verbs such as developed, created, managed, and this is okay for a cover letter, but for the resume, we're going to avoid it. Number 7, the use of color and fancy font will guarantee your resume will get noticed and read. And we're going to say false. Perhaps it may get noticed, but not for the right reasons. You really should, I would recommend some of the more standard resume layouts, and we have a great packet called Building an Effective Resume that I will share with you that I would recommend going through some of the different types of options. But the only perhaps exception to this is maybe if you're applying to graphic design jobs, and then that really needs to reflect your work. But for the most part, you'll be doing more of a standard traditional resume as you apply to opportunities. Number 8, you should use strong action verbs to start your bullet points and describe your accomplishments. This is true, and we'll go through some strategic action verbs today. So on your resume, employers look for the following: problem-solving skills, ability to work in a team, strong work ethic, analytical and qualitative skills, communication skills, written, leadership, communication skills, verbal, initiative, detailed-oriented. These are some great skills that you probably already possess. You may have used them in past positions, you may be using them in current positions, you may have gained these in the classroom, or a mixture of those 2 to 3 areas. And employers look for these because they cannot easily teach you this. They can teach you about their organization, they can teach you about certain software, they can give you some strategies for doing the type of job you're going to do, but they can't teach you communication skills. You need to come to the table with that already in place, as well as all of these other areas. So I would maximize your time at UMass Boston, as well as any internships or work experience, to really hone in on these skills and then strategically place them on your resume so an employer sees all you have to offer them. On average, how many seconds does a recruiter spend looking at a resume? Any guesses? 7.4 seconds. Not a lot of time. So what you want to do is really make your resume engaging so an employer looks at it, they are excited about what you have to offer, and they read it some more, wanting to bring you in for an interview. And we'll talk about how to do that today. One of the tips is just knowing what you bring to the table and how to arrange it. So your resume can list your work experience, your volunteer experience, and other areas of involvement from campus clubs to different type of organizations you may be involved in. You may also want to include a professional summary, and we'll get that in a moment, and list your related coursework. But overall, no matter what you choose to put on your resume, your goal is to show the employer why you are a great candidate for the job or internship. So we're going to want to start strong and end strong. And the first third of your resume is essential. It is key. What impression do you want to make? What impact do you want to have in your career? What can you do for this employer? You're going to want to have keywords in this section. You are going to want to use some ideas from the job description and incorporate strong action statements that highlight your experience and value to an employer. And then thinking about what other accomplishments you have. So it could be key work or key internship or key volunteer experience. But overall, think about why the employer should hire you. What can you bring to the table? Because most likely they're going to read the start in that 7.4 seconds and then skim down and see how your resume ends. So even at the end, it could be nice to put a skills section, something that really highlights, again, all that you can offer this employer. So here's some sample beginning points. You want to have your name, your address, one phone number, whichever one is easiest to reach you at. If you have two, put one on. Your email address. For those who are graduating, you only have access to your UMass Boston email address for a certain amount of time. So I would encourage you to put whatever email address you want to use long term. If you're in your earlier years at UMass Boston, you may use your student email address if you're looking for an internship. But for those looking for jobs and graduating, you want to make sure you have a professional email address that will stay with you. And you can always put your LinkedIn profile in the link to your profile in your header. And then an objective. An objective is optional, but it can really help you have an impact at the start of your resume. So this example, it states, to obtain a journalism internship writing articles on local politics for the Daily Times. You can also start to show your skills. So this next example has seeking a job as a public relations specialist, utilizing strong written communication skills to respond to media requests, write press releases, and develop new protocols for strategic outreach. For this third option, to obtain the community outreach coordinator position, working to build a strong connection between Bay Cove, Human Services, and seniors across the Boston community. So there's a mixture of different ways you can do this. You can simply state what you're going to apply to. You could state what you're applying to and highlight your skills, or you can also highlight your impact, or a mixture of all of those. But it is that first impression. It is the start of those 7.4 seconds. So really think how you can strategically use your objective to highlight what you would bring to the table. So with starting off strong, reflect back. What skills, what experience, what knowledge do I have? And really remind yourself, if the beginning does not engage the employer, he or she may never read the full document. So it's very important to think about how to maximize the first third of your resume. One way is through a summary of qualifications section. So this is very specific to you, your skills, what you have to offer the employer as it relates to the job description. And we want to make it concrete. So instead of just saying strong communication skills, you could state strong writing, editing, proofreading, and verbal communication skills. We're going to expand upon it, try to give something concrete. So even further down, instead of just saying strong organizational skills, you could state strong organizational skills with an ability to successfully prioritize and multitask in a fast-paced environment. I see more depth, I can see more impact, I can think as an employer, this is what you have and this is what you can do in my organization. So this has to be tailored, it has to be crafted to each position you apply to, but if you put the energy in, it's going to stand out in a positive way to an employer. In addition to a summary of qualifications section, there's a lot of different sections that you can have on your resume. Everything from listing the related courses to technical skills to lab skills to special projects to research, related experience, additional experience, volunteer experience, leadership, community involvement, community engagement. There's different ways you can say some of the same areas. You have to think what language you want to use that represents who you are and the impact that you've had through your experiences. And some of these may be further down the line in your career. So if you ever want to create a publication, when can you do that? What path can you take to make sure that happens? Faculty members are a great resource and guidance through some of these areas, especially if you want to do a publication or do a poster presentation at a conference, for example. In a lot of these career services, we can give you ideas on how to explore these areas and how you want to develop your resume. So let's look at a sample resume. So here we have our header, and here we have the summary of qualifications section. So this one is going to be more focused on the human services area. And notice in the summary of qualifications section, it has experience working with youth, but then it has knowledge of, and a little further down, familiarity with, ability to. If you don't have the direct experience yet, but your academic studies have given you certain pieces of knowledge, the ability to be familiar with certain areas, the possibility to do that work, being familiar with certain things through your studies, you can highlight that here, and then we're going to support it further down through listing your education, through listing your related courses, so the employer understands how you have that knowledge, how you have the familiarity with certain topics or areas that you might need. And you could list your courses. You don't need to list a specific course number, just the title. But you do want to make sure they're more upper level courses, because the more entry level courses an employer isn't as interested in. And then you could put your related experience. So here we're looking about the first third to half of your resume. And for this specific example, the most related experience is a volunteer position. So again, think through all of your experiences and what is most important for the employer to see first. On this next sample, we have a public relations internship. So for this one, we're going to utilize that objective, and we're going to say to obtain a public relations internship, utilizing strong communication and organizational skills to work on projects for high-profile healthcare clients. So there's our impact. We have a summary of qualifications. This time, instead of bullet points, we're using semicolons in a block format. It just depends how much space you have. And then we have education. If anyone has an associate's degree, you could list that here. You just want to make sure your most recent education is listed on the top. For your GPA, 3.0 or higher, you can definitely list. Dean's List is important. If your GPA is below a 3.0, while we're not going to put the GPA in, no matter what, you need to be proud that you are going to obtain your bachelor's degree, which is going to open the doors to many different opportunities that you otherwise might not have access to without a degree. And then if you don't have work experience yet, or the work experience isn't as relevant, and you're looking for that first internship, maybe you could do related courses. So for example, for this one, the student is a communication major. So they're going to put down that they took health communication, where they researched certain topics. Maybe they developed a project or gained an understanding of. And then perhaps they took advertising, PR campaign planning, and they analyzed, planned, and presented. And then it would just fill out from that point. But always starting with an action verb, maybe with ideas from a job description. But again, think about this first third, this first half of your resume, and how to be strategic about what you bring to the table. And when you write those action statements, we want to be strategic as well. So I like to use the PAR approach. If there was a problem or a situation, the action you took, and the result of that. So this is probably not the best example of an action statement, just doing rote press releases. Better could be wrote, edited, and distributed press releases and media advisories. For our best, wrote, edited, and distributed press releases and media advisories to announce firm news and reflect key goals to the public. So, what you did, the action, and the result. It's important to have a full statement. It is an example of your written communication skills. It is an example of the impact you have made and can make for the employer that you're going to apply to work with. And these are NACE core competencies. You saw many of them earlier in this presentation under what employers look for most in a resume. And a lot of you already possess these skills, and many of you may be continually working on further developing these skills as well. But employers are looking for these, and they're looking for them on a resume. So how do you put critical thinking, or how do you put teamwork on a resume? So on the next slide, we think of action verbs. So here's a short list of action verbs for critical thinking. Everything from analyze to evaluated to research to summarize to studied. We see oral or written communications, addressed, collaborated, communicated, directed, marketed, promoted, reported. And teamwork, advanced, encouraged, fostered, helped, managed, trained. Think about how you want to start off your statement and then build from that point. Sometimes looking at action statements may remind you of all that you have done throughout your academic studies, throughout your work experience, throughout the different volunteer or other experiences you may have had. We have a whole packet, the Building Effective Resume packet, and it has all of the competencies we saw a moment ago with a variety of action verbs that you can use to perhaps put on your resume to highlight all that you have done so an employer sees not only what you have done, but your potential with their organization. When you finish your resume and it is time to submit, be sure to proofread your document. Don't trust spell check. Go through it, make sure, read it out loud, word by word, to make sure you not only have everything correct, but it sounds right. It is grammatically correct, as well as all the spelling is right, and you have highlighted your accomplishments and results. Make sure to save your resume under a clear name, preferably your first and your last name, maybe with a hyphen in the position you're going to apply to. I would not recommend putting resume 12, 15, 20. Put your name and what you are applying to or the organization. A cover letter should always accompany your resume. Even if an employer does not ask for a cover letter, it shows initiative, and sometimes employers divide out the stack by those who submit a cover letter with their resume and those who don't. So if you can't show initiative without having the job, they wonder what's going to happen when you do have the job. So they want to take those who really want to be with that organization, who put forth the effort in the early stages, to bring them to the next round. And if you are applying via email, I would recommend writing the job title or internship title in the subject line, as this will alert the recipient to your purpose of your email, and it will prevent your message from possibly going into spam, especially if it's left blank by accident. One thing I will say is there may be specific directions that are in a job description, and be sure to follow those to a T. You're making an impression throughout this whole process. So the employer wants to know, can you follow directions? Are you going to be a good fit with the organization? So everything you submit is a reflection on you and what your potential is. And then references. So if the employer asks for references, they should be listed on a separate document. Each reference, you should include the following. First, their full name, their title, the organization they work for. Have handy their address. Some employers request this information, as well as your reference's phone number and email address. And it is also important to write your professional relationship. So it could be a supervisor, a professor, a coworker. but highlight who they are and how you've worked with them and where you've worked with them and the capacity that you've worked with them. And you could have about 3 references. It's nice if you can just have 5 in general to pull from because you may want different references for different positions. But on average, employers will ask for 3. As you move forward, it's important to think about employer feedback. So this is what I've heard throughout my years of working at UMass Boston. Employers have said that candidates have not moved forward to get the interview because there was either grammatical or spelling errors. They did not change the objective to the specific job. This even includes putting the correct employer's name to personalize it. They may have had gaps. So if you have gaps, come to Career Services. We can talk with you about how to work through that and make your resume strong. Sometimes there's too much information. So perhaps somebody put like 10 bullet points, and that's way too much. The employer couldn't focus in on what was most important for them to know. Or the resume was not tailored. It was not geared towards the specific position. Or maybe even it came down to cover letter. Maybe the resume was solid, but the cover letter was generic and it wasn't personalized. Or the candidate did not put the accomplishments that they held. So those results, right? What results have you had? As that shows the potential of your future results that you could have with an employer. I hope this presentation was helpful as you think about your resume, to tailor it for a specific position, knowing that you will always want to submit a tailored resume and that time, that investment in doing that will have a better return because sometimes employers get 200 resumes for a job. So how are they going to take it down from 200 resumes to maybe 7 to 10 to interview, and then one ultimate candidate will get that job? So being strategic, tailoring your resume, using keywords, showing your results, knowing what you bring to the employer and how you arrange that is all important. So if you have any questions, please contact the Office of Career Services and Internships. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you.